Guys, so for the tables I made this little Desmo so that we can actually see the graphs as they go. So let me center this so we can see the points. So the first table in your classwork packet, this is on bottom of page 7, is this y equals x. So what that means is every time I plug in x, right there, it's just going to equal y. When I plug in -2 equals -2. -1 equals -1. 0 equals 0, and 2 equals 2, because there's no multiplication or anything that I'm supposed to be doing. So if we zoom out, we can see those purple dots were plotted for us. So what do we think? Is this a linear function? Is this a linear function? So remember, linear functions are going to have a constant rate of change, and they're going to have a straight line. So yes, this is a straight line. It's a linear function. So the next one is this absolute value. So if you remember, absolute values look like the distance from 0, which means that you are adding just the space from 0, not necessarily a negative or a positive. So if I take the absolute value of -2, it's just 2 spaces away from 0. So it's the red dots now. The absolute value of -1 is just 1 space away from 0. 0 is 0 spaces away from 0. And 2 is 2 spaces away from 0. So what we see is that these purple dots got flipped up, and those other ones are in the same spot. So is this one linear? Is this a straight line? We can, in fact, I can fill out the whole graph for you so you can see all of it going through those dots. It's honestly 2 straight lines, here and here, but it isn't. That means it's not linear. Linear needs to be 1 continuous straight line. So this is an absolute value graph, which is not a linear graph. Linear would be just 1 straight line. So let's try our next. So is this a linear function? We would say no. Let's try our next one, which asks us about y equals 1 over x. So that just means I'm going to put 1 over my x value. 1 over my x value. 1 over my x value. Can I do 1 over 0? Is that going to give me anything? Hopefully you remember that 0 over 0 does not work. So we're looking at these 3 blue dots, because 1 over 0 didn't give us anything, so we only had 3 things. So it's kind of hard to tell what that shape is. I can tell it's not a straight line, because it's going down and then back up again. So you can see that. It's actually a really interesting looking graph, so I'm going to show you the whole thing so you can see it. So it's this red. So you can see it goes through those 2 blue dots, and then this one up here is actually separate. It's going up there. So you will learn about this in high school. They're really fun, called rational functions, but they are not linear functions. They're a different type of functions. We have lots and lots of types, but we are really only learning about linear this year. So no, it's not a linear function. So our last one is the square root symbol. So if you remember the square root symbol, but that is just going to be us taking the square root of something. So conveniently, Desmos is a calculator, and so I should be able to type these in. But instead of just typing them in, I'm going to tell you we can't take the square root of a negative. You type it in your calculator, it will give you an undefined. So I can't do the negatives. I can do 0, and I can do the square root of 2. And I will show you, these ones are also tricky to see because we only have 2 points. So it is this red line right here, going off to the side. It is not straight. It's going slowing down and slowing down, so it is not a linear function. So if we look at those types of equations we looked at, what do you think? How can you predict which equations will be linear functions? The idea is that it has to have a constant rate, which means constant rate always means multiply. So you can multiply and add, but you can't do anything else. So you can't do absolute values, you can't do dividing on bottom, you can have x on bottom. You can't do square roots, you can't do exponents. One of the teachers used a great term, x can't have any jewelry. So x can't have any of these extra stuff. It can just have a multiplication, and that's it. So we can multiply by a fraction, we can multiply by a whole number, we can multiply by a decimal, but that's it. We just can multiply, because constantly multiplying is what a constant rate means.